You're probably listening to this while doing something else. Maybe late in the evening, or early before the day really starts. Nothing dramatic, just another quiet pocket of time. Most people who end up here aren't confused about their lives. They're functioning. Things are handled. Bills, work, relationships, there's a rhythm that mostly works. So if you're here, it's not because something is broken, and it's not because you're searching for answers. It's more like this. Everything is in place, yet something feels slightly distant. Not wrong, just a little thin. This isn't a space where anyone is going to analyze you. There's no diagnosis happening, no attempt to explain who you are or what you should do. For the next while, nothing needs to be improved. Nothing needs to be questioned. We're not here to learn anything new. We're just slowing down enough to notice what's already being relied on every day. You don't need to agree with anything you hear. You don't need to remember it later. You don't need to hold a position. Think of this less as a talk and more like sitting quietly in the same room with an idea without deciding what it means yet. If at any moment your attention drifts, that's fine. Life keeps moving either way. We're simply observing how life is usually understood and why that understanding is actually useful. That's the starting point. So let's begin there, with the assumption most of us are already living from without ever having to name it. Most days begin the same way. You wake up. There's a sequence already waiting. Time, tasks, expectations. Some of them chosen, most of them simply there. You don't question this structure, and there's no reason to. It's what allows the day to move. Life, as it's usually lived, feels like something that stretches across time. Yesterday explains today. Today prepares tomorrow. Memory holds it together. Plans give it direction. This way of seeing things works. It's how calendars make sense, how promises are kept, how effort turns into results. Without it, even simple things would fall apart. Showing up on time, raising a child, building anything that lasts more than a moment. So when people talk about having a life, they usually mean this: a storyline that can be followed, a sense that things are going somewhere. There's comfort in that, stability, a feeling of being grounded in continuity. Pause here for a moment. Not to question it, just to notice how familiar it feels, how natural it seems. This understanding of life doesn't ask much from you. It only asks that you remember, that you anticipate, that you keep track. And most of the time, it does its job quietly. You don't think about it, you rely on it. Even rest often fits into this structure. Rest so you can continue, time off so you can return. There's nothing wrong with that. It's practical. It's humane. It's how societies function. And yet, sometimes, in the middle of a normal day, there's a subtle moment. Nothing dramatic, just a faint sense that while everything is moving, something isn't quite here. Not missing, just not touched. You don't stop the day because of it. You keep going. Of course you do. But that small, barely noticeable gap is worth staying with a little longer. Not to fix it, just to see it more clearly before it turns into a conclusion. There are moments when the structure still holds, but the energy behind it doesn't. You go through the motions. You do what needs to be done. From the outside, nothing looks off. Work gets finished. Conversations happen. The day checks its own boxes. And yet, there's a quiet sense of repetition. Not boredom exactly. More like a softness that's worn thin. This doesn't show up in crisis. It shows up in familiarity, in days that look almost identical, in routines that once felt grounding, and now feel slightly distant. Most people explain this to themselves in practical ways. They're tired. They need a break. Maybe they've been pushing too hard. Those explanations make sense. They're reasonable. They keep life moving. And usually they work. A weekend helps. A change of pace resets things. The feeling fades. Pause here. Notice how nothing is being questioned yet. Nothing is being challenged. But sometimes the feeling returns. not louder, just steadier. You can be well rested and still feel it, productive and still feel it, surrounded by people and still feel it. It's not that life isn't happening, things are clearly happening. It's more like you're present for the outline, but not fully for the texture. You don't panic over this, you adapt, you adjust expectations, you learn to function smoothly. And that's not a failure, it's a skill. But in learning to function so well, something else quietly steps back. Not because it's lost, but because it isn't being asked for. There's no need to name that yet, no need to decide what it means. Just notice how familiar this territory is, how many people live here without complaint, and how rarely it's talked about, because nothing appears to be wrong. Right now, your body is already doing something familiar. It's sitting, or standing, or moving in a way you don't need to supervise. You're breathing without checking. Your weight is supported by something, a chair, the floor, your shoes. None of this requires a plan. Most of the time, we only notice the body when it interrupts, when there's tension, pain, fatigue that won't go away. Otherwise, it stays in the background, reliable, quiet. If someone asked how your body feels, you might answer from memory, fine, tired, a little stiff. Those answers come quickly. They're efficient. Pause for a moment. Before the answer, there's sensation, pressure where you're making contact, subtle movement with each breath, temperature. No need to label it. No need to hold on to it. Just let it be there, the way it already is. This isn't an exercise. Nothing needs to deepen. Nothing needs to change. Notice how neutral this is, how undramatic. The body doesn't narrate. It doesn't compare today with yesterday. It doesn't prepare for later. It simply responds, moment by moment. And while all the usual thinking continues, this layer keeps operating quietly underneath. You don't have to prefer it. You don't have to stay with it. Just recognize that it's always been available, even during the busiest days, even during stress, even during long stretches of repetition. Most of life is lived while this is happening, but rarely noticed. Not because it's hidden, but because nothing in particular calls attention to it. Let that land gently. There's no insight required here, no takeaway. Just the simple fact that something immediate has been present this whole time without asking anything from you. And from here, it becomes easier to notice how this same immediacy shows up in places we usually describe in very different ways. Emotions usually announce themselves with a name. Anger, anxiety, relief, motivation. We're quick with those labels. They help us respond. They help us explain ourselves to others. I was stressed. I felt off. I wasn't in the mood. That way of speaking is useful. It keeps things moving. It keeps interaction smooth. But before the name arrives, there's often something quieter. A tightness across the chest, a heaviness behind the eyes, a subtle lift or drop in the stomach. Most of the time, this goes unnoticed. The label shows up first. The story follows right behind it. Pause here. You don't need to search for anything. Just notice how often emotion is described before it's actually felt. The same thing happens socially. When you walk into a room, you don't experience a meeting right away, or a family dinner, or a difficult conversation. First, there's a tone, an atmosphere, a sense of distance or closeness that's felt before anyone speaks. But almost immediately, the mind organizes it, roles appear, expectations settle in. You know who you're supposed to be. They know who they are. And again, this works. It keeps relationships functional. It prevents confusion. Then there are habits of thought. The background commentary, planning, reviewing, rehearsing conversations that may never happen. We think of this as constant thinking, as if it's uninterrupted. But if you listen closely, there are small gaps, moments where the commentary drops out before starting again. Those gaps don't feel special. They're easy to miss. Pause again. No need to hold the silence. No need to extend it. Just notice that it's already part of experience, woven in between everything else. Emotions, social moments, thoughts. All of them arrive wrapped in interpretation, but something simpler is always there first. Not hidden, not waiting to be discovered, just easily overshadowed by how quickly the mind does its job. And most days, there's no reason to slow that job down. Except for moments like this, where noticing doesn't interrupt life, it simply sits alongside it. Most of what we call life is carried by images, not pictures you see with your eyes, but pictures made of memory and expectation. How your week is going, who you are in it, what still needs to happen for things to feel complete. These images are useful. They help you orient. They let you move through time without getting lost. When you say, "my life," this is usually what you're referring to, a collection of scenes, past ones that explain you, future ones that pull you forward. There's nothing wrong with this. It's how continuity is maintained. Pause here. Without pushing anything away, notice how often experience is translated almost instantly into an image or a description. Even something simple, a walk, a meal, a conversation. Before it's fully felt, it's already being placed somewhere. Good, productive, meaningful, or not. This translation happens fast, so fast it feels like the experience itself. But occasionally, there's a moment where the translation lags. You're still chewing, still walking, still listening. And for a brief second, there's no summary yet. No conclusion, no mental snapshot, just the rawness of what's happening. Those moments don't announce themselves. They don't feel profound. They're easy to overlook. Pause again. Nothing needs to be captured. Nothing needs to be remembered. The images will return. They always do. But seeing that they arrive after experience, not before it, can be quietly revealing. Not in a dramatic way. More like noticing the order of things. Life doesn't wait to be imagined. It's already in motion. The imagining follows, organizing what's already past. Most of the time we live inside the organization, and that's practical. But every now and then, the immediacy shows itself first before it's shaped into a story. And recognizing that timing, even once, changes the texture of listening to everything that comes next. There are moments when attention settles on its own. Not because you tried, not because you remembered to. Maybe while waiting in line, or looking out a window, or standing in the kitchen before the coffee finishes. Nothing special is happening, and yet there's a simple sense of being here. You're not thinking about that moment, you're just in it. These moments don't last long, they're not meant to. A thought comes in, the day resumes, plans reappear. And still, nothing was disrupted. Life didn't pause, responsibilities didn't vanish. Pause here. Notice how ordinary this is. There was no effort involved, no technique, no belief. Just a brief return to what was already present. Most people dismiss these moments. They seem too small to matter, too fleeting to count. But they happen more often than we realize. They slip in between tasks, between sentences, between thoughts. You don't hold on to them, and you don't need to. What matters is noticing that life continues perfectly well before, during, and after them. You can answer emails from here. You can drive from here. You can make difficult decisions from here. Nothing about your life structure is threatened. Pause again. There's no instruction to stay, no suggestion to repeat anything. Just the recognition that this simplicity doesn't require a special setting. It's available in motion, in noise, in routine. And when attention naturally moves away again, that's fine too. The point isn't to remain, it's to know that returning doesn't mean stepping out of life. It simply means stepping back into it, without the need to explain what's happening while it's happening. The only thing you have is life. Not the idea of it, not the version that stretches across memory and plans, just what's already here. Everything else still has its place, Thought continues, identity continues, the story keeps moving. Nothing has been removed. But there's a quiet distinction now between what is imagined about life and what is immediately being lived. That distinction doesn't ask for attention. It doesn't ask to be held. It doesn't ask to become a belief. It simply waits to be noticed when there's space. Life doesn't need to be made present. It doesn't arrive later. It isn't hidden behind effort. It happens before it's named, before it's remembered, before it's explained. And then the explanations return, as they should. They help you navigate. They help you relate. They help you continue. There's no conflict here, no side to choose. The imagined life isn't an enemy, it's a tool. And like any tool, it works best when it isn't doing all the work. The rest of the day will unfold as usual. Conversations, decisions, small movements, larger ones. Nothing about that needs to change. But somewhere inside all of that, there's the simple fact that life is already taking place, without commentary. You don't need to stay with that. You don't need to return to it. Just knowing that it's there changes how everything else lands. And as you go back to whatever comes next, the question isn't what to do with this. It's whether life feels any different while it's quietly continuing on its own.